He was the CEO's most trusted partner until she humiliated him in front of everyone. But she didn't cry until the sheriff arrived. But what happened at the end will shock you. The hum of innovation pulsed through the open-plan office of Halden Technologies, where the air smelled faintly of espresso and fresh ambition. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline and sunlight streamed in casting golden slants over minimalist desks and the occasional flash of glowing screens. It was a Thursday afternoon, midweek, high pressure, just how Serafina liked it. Serafina Sarah Thorne, early 40s and effortlessly captivating, strode down the center aisle like she owned the sunbeams, which in a way she did. Her perfectly tailored power suit mirrored her personality, sharp, visionary, commanding. Her reputation in the tech world was near mythic, the golden girl who turned a startup into an industry player before her 40th birthday. She moved fast, spoke faster, and didn't entertain obstacles, especially not those that challenged her narrative. At his desk in corporate operations, Elias, her COO and partner of 7 years building the company, didn't look up when he felt her pass. He didn't need to. He recognized the cadence of her heels the way some people recognize a storm rolling in. Elias Vance was everything Serafina's world needed, but rarely acknowledged. Calm where she was erratic, thorough where she was reactive. In his mid-40s, he carried a quiet power, his presence grounding under the afternoon light. Suit tailored for function, not flash, posture straight with purpose. While others in the office dressed to impress Serafina, he dressed to perform. His spreadsheets were fortresses, his vendor relationships ironclad. He was the foundation to Serafina's flair. They'd met at a conference 7 years earlier. A chance conversation over coffee, a surprising alignment of vision, and what started as collaboration quickly evolved into strategy, then partnership, then the quiet bedrock of the company. By the time Halden Technologies was a major player, half the company already considered them an inseparable force, his execution balancing her instinct. But what the company didn't see, what not even Elias wanted to admit aloud, was how quickly that balance had started to shift. Serafina had been distant lately, distracted, less interested in his input on operations during meetings, and quicker to dismiss him in front of others. Her public jokes about his old-school methods had begun to land more harshly. At first, he told himself it was the pressure, new investors, the acquisition talk. He made allowances the way committed people often do. But then came the undermining, the closed-door meetings. He was excluded from the passive-aggressive questions about his department's efficiency, the way she stopped seeking his counsel during morning check-ins. Elias never once lost his composure. He was the kind of man who made his pain wait until after hours, who reminded himself of his value in quiet moments before returning to lead team briefings with precision. His professionalism wasn't armor. It was a declaration. Still, the tension was there, thick, unspoken, eating at the space between them like termites in polished wood. Serafina sat in her glass-walled corner office, now staring out the window with a frown. She was thinking about public image, about quarterly projections, about how the company would be perceived if too many personal dynamics bled into professional ones. She knew people admired Elias, knew he was respected, liked, even trusted. That made it harder. She glanced down at the team structure sheet on her desk. His name was there, a node in the middle of a web of green check marks. She sighed. He was brilliant, but brilliance didn't always align with optics. And lately, she'd begun to feel like he was a liability to her authority and brand. Back in the operations wing, Elias typed steadily, headphones in, but not playing anything. He didn't need music. He needed stillness. His instincts were starting to talk louder than his doubts. She was planning something. He didn't know what. Not yet, but he could feel it. When they were alone in her office or in quiet moments after work events, things were colder. She no longer asked him about his day. Their once easy collaboration had turned into forced updates and silence. The upcoming strategy summit hadn't involved him in 3 weeks, but Elias stayed focused. He had built his name in this industry with grace, not noise. If something was shifting beneath his feet, He would meet it with the same calm that had gotten him this far. Still, as the sunlight began to fade and the buzz of conversation rippled toward the town hall meeting set for later that afternoon, Elias allowed himself one moment, just one. He minimized his spreadsheet, stared into the reflection on his screen and whispered almost inaudibly, "Whatever it is, I'll survive it." The company-wide town hall was called with short notice. An alert pinged across calendars just that morning. Mandatory leadership alignment and strategic restructure. The subject line had read. The main conference room buzzed with mild curiosity as employees shuffled in. Laptops in hand, iced coffee half-finish, glass walls wrapped around the sleek space. Sunlight pouring in from all sides, creating a golden glow over polished floors and rows of modern chairs. Elias sat near the front, not because he had to, but because he always did. Early, ready, composed. His notepad lay on his lap, pen resting across it. He wore a simple navy shirt tucked neatly into gray slacks, hair neatly combed back. His face was calm, eyes forward, hands still. Serafina stood at the head of the room, flanked by two executives. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes darted quickly, almost nervously, scanning the faces before her. She wore her usual dark blazer, top button open just enough to signal confidence. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "I won't waste your time with long speeches." She paused for effect, voice even. "As part of our growth strategy, and in alignment with investor expectations, we are implementing a restructure effective immediately." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, brows furrowed. Elias sat straighter. Serafina continued, eyes never landing on him. "This means consolidating certain roles to eliminate conflicts of strategic alignment and ensure peak performance across all departments." And then, without flinching, without blinking, she said it. "We've made the decision to part ways with our chief operating officer effective today." There was a stillness in the room so deep it buzzed. Time slowed. Elias didn't move, didn't breathe. Then came the second blow. This decision stems from ongoing concerns around strategic misalignment and the need for a more agile structure. Given our differing approaches, Serafina added, "We've concluded that separation is best for both parties and the company's future." Strategic misalignment. The phrase echoed like a gunshot in a church. No one looked at him directly, but every pair of eyes in the room knew exactly who she meant. And then one by one, they turned toward him, some with pity, some with confusion, some pretending not to see him at all. Elias's heart pounded, but his face was a mask, still silent. He didn't allow it to twitch, didn't blink more than necessary. But inside, something cracked. It wasn't just the professional blow. It was her. The woman he'd helped build this company with, sat beside in countless planning sessions, made future plans with for its growth. The woman who had once trusted his counsel, whispering, "We've got this," before big presentations. The woman who had clapped him on the back when they closed their first major deal, laughing with relief. That same woman had just removed him from his role. Not behind closed doors, not with a conversation, not even with an email, but on stage in front of every colleague, intern, an executive who had ever respected him. She never once looked at him. Elias stood slowly. The sound of his chair sliding back seemed deafening in the silence. He didn't speak, didn't ask why. He just nodded once, a movement so slight it could have been missed, and began walking toward the door. His steps clicked against the floor like a metronome, steady, unfaltering. No one stopped him. No one dared. Behind him, whispers stirred, the way people do when something sacred has just been shattered and no one wants to pick up the pieces. By the time the doors closed behind him, the ache in his chest had settled into something deeper, something that didn't feel like sadness. Felt like betrayal sharpened into steel. That evening, Elias's phone remained dark. No updates, no reposted affirmations, no passive-aggressive tweets, no emails. He vanished. His social accounts went still. His messaging apps showed no status. Even his closest colleagues, those who would have rushed to offer support, got nothing. It was as if he had evaporated into silence. Serafina sat alone in her office hours later, staring at the same spot where, He'd once leaned against his desk, teasing her about her overuse of buzzwords. The conference room was empty now, lights dimmed, the office quiet. She thought of texting him. She didn't. And somewhere far from the glow of floor-to-ceiling windows and curated company slides, Elias sat in silence, not broken, not defeated, just gone. The weeks that followed Elias's exit unfolded like a slow, unraveling thread, too subtle to panic over, but too persistent to ignore. At first, it was small things, harmless, forgettable. A minor vendor who'd always been overly friendly now responded to Serafina's emails with curt one-liners. A mid-level developer who had once gushed about staying with the company for years gave 2 weeks' notice with no explanation. Another employee, one of Elias's old analysts, left the following day. No fuss, no farewell post on Slack. Just gone. Serafina didn't flinch. Attrition was normal after big changes. People needed time to adjust. Let them go. She could replace them. But then came the quiet cancellations. One of Halden Technologies' most prized clients, a government-backed energy startup they'd spent months courting, pulled out of a 7-figure integration project. The reason? Strategic realignment delivered via a generic email and a polite thank you. Serafina read it twice, eyes narrowing. Something about the language felt rehearsed, hollow, but again, she chalked it up to timing. People pivot all the time. Still, it nagged at her. There was a strange stillness in the office now, the kind that crept in after an earthquake. Not loud, just off. A new intern made the mistake of asking who Elias was, and got an awkward silence in return. His name was no longer spoken in meetings. His desk had been cleared, the chair removed altogether, as if his absence needed to be scrubbed from memory. Serafina powered through, held strategy calls, sent pep talk emails. She needed momentum. She needed noise. But what she got instead was a letter. It arrived on a Thursday afternoon in a matte white envelope. Clean, professional, no logo. Serafina didn't open it immediately. It sat on the edge of her desk for a full hour while she fielded back-to-back Zoom calls. It wasn't until the office had emptied out, golden light fading beyond the windows, that she tore the seal. The language was precise, legal, cold. It was a formal request. No demand for internal company documentation, hiring policies, termination protocols, performance reviews, and a full breakdown of all communication records tied to Elias's name. The request was signed by a law firm she didn't recognize, one based out of New York. The tone of the letter wasn't hostile, but it wasn't friendly either. Serafina's jaw tensed. She flipped the letter over, expecting more. There was nothing. She leaned back in her chair and exhaled slowly, trying to make sense of it. Was this a legal probe? A preemptive fishing expedition? A scare tactic? She checked her email. Nothing from Elias. No follow-up. No lawyer contacting her in warning. No rumors buzzing in the executive grapevine. It was just the letter. Unbothered, silent, exact. She tossed it onto the corner of her desk. It's probably nothing, she muttered to herself. But deep down, beneath the cool rationalizations and bravado, something clenched in her gut. Elias was quiet, but he'd never been careless. Serafina knew how methodical he was, how he documented everything even when he didn't need to, how he backed up files, kept records, dated his meeting notes. It used to impress her back when they were aligned back when she saw his orderliness as a strength instead of a threat. She had told herself he was too proud to retaliate, that he'd disappear, lick his wounds, and move on quietly. He was smart, sure, but not strategic enough to hurt her where it counted. Right? The next morning, another email hit her inbox. An automated update from the company's billing software. A small but steady client had stopped payment. No explanation. Serafina skimmed the message. Annoyance bubbling up beneath the surface. Another call came in later that day from someone on the operations team. Hey, not sure if it's worth mentioning, but one of the new consultants pulled out of our onboarding session. Said he's joining a new firm instead. Something called Apex Strategy. Serafina paused. She hadn't heard of that name before. Did he say who runs it? No, but it's backed by a few former clients. Apparently, they're poaching top operations talent from mid-size firms. It's pretty new, I think. Serafina frowned, her fingers already typing the name into her browser. The homepage loaded slowly, and then there it was. Apex Strategy Partners, delivering foundational excellence through strategic partnership. Founded by leaders who prioritize substance over spin. At the bottom of the page, a team photo appeared, stylized, elegant. There he was, Elias, standing front and center. His smile didn't look triumphant. It looked finished. Serafina's blood ran cold. The letter, the quiet exits, the client drop, the new firm. This wasn't reaction, it was a plan. The knock came early, too early for comfort. Serafina had just finished her second espresso and was reviewing projections when the receptionist buzzed in. "There's someone here from the sheriff's office." Her stomach tightened. "Send them in." A uniformed officer stepped into the glass office with calm professionalism, handed her a thick envelope and said 5 words that made her skin go cold. "You've been formally served, ma'am." Then he turned and walked out. Serafina stood frozen for a second, the envelope heavy in her hand. Her fingers trembled as she peeled it open. She didn't get past the first page before the blood drained from her face. Plaintiff Elias Vance, defendant Serafina Thorne, Halden Technologies Incorporated claims. Wrongful termination, breach of partnership, defamation. The letterhead bore the name of the New York-based firm that had requested the earlier documentation. This wasn't a warning. This was war. Serafina dropped into her chair, the noise of the office muffled like cotton stuffed in her ears. Her eyes scanned the details. The case was built like a fortress. Dated email threads, messages she never thought he'd kept, audio recordings of their private meetings, including one where, in a moment of frustration, she'd muttered, "Don't make me choose between you and the investors." It was damning. It was real. And it wasn't all. She opened a second document attached to the summons, a press briefing. The words blurred for a second before snapping into focus. Apex Strategy launches with vision to redefine foundational strategy in tech. She blinked. Elias's name was there, listed not as an employee, not as a consultant, but as founding partner. Below him were photos of 4 other people, all former Halden Tech employees, trusted ones who had left in the quiet ripple after he was fired. Scrolling down, she saw something worse. A list of early-stage clients. 3 of them had previously been hers. 1 had signed an NDA just months earlier. Serafina's chest burned. The article was already published. It was spreading. LinkedIn, Twitter, Tech Daily Digest. The headline was starting to trend. CEO sued by former partner who launches rival firm. By noon, her inbox was a minefield. Board members asking for explanations. Shareholders forwarding the article. HR pinging her with compliance alerts. The general counsel scheduled an urgent Zoom call. By 1 p.m., an emergency board meeting had been called. Serafina sat in the conference room, barely listening, as numbers and legal liabilities were thrown around like grenades. Her once devoted CFO couldn't meet her eye. Her CEO interim looked like she'd aged 10 years. She rubbed her temples as one board member, a blunt-talking venture capitalist from Chicago, finally said what they were all thinking. "We have a PR crisis on our hands and a legal one. And to be honest, Serafina, it doesn't look good. He's not just suing you. He's winning already." Serafina didn't respond. She couldn't. Her mind kept replaying their last real conversation weeks ago in her office after another long workday. Elias had asked her gently why she'd been treating him like a liability. Because, she'd said with a sigh, "I don't want people to think the company relies that much on operations." To which he replied, "Then they'll never know it couldn't run without it." She had brushed it off, just like she'd brushed him off at work, just like she'd brushed off the early signs of his absence. But he hadn't vanished. He had prepared. Elias didn't rage. He didn't post cryptic quotes. He didn't leak screenshots. He built a case. Built a company. Built a reputation that no person, no matter how powerful, could bury. The noise in the room faded into background static. As Serafina sat still, staring at the wall of glass behind the board table. Just beyond it, she could see the skyline, the one she used to believe she owned, and now she couldn't even see the ground shifting beneath her. The concrete steps outside the courthouse baked under the late afternoon sun, turning every surface into something warm and unforgiving. It was the kind of heat that made people impatient, edgy, even those used to being in control. Serafina sat alone on the far end of the granite bench, hunched forward, elbows resting on her knees, her hands loosely clasped. The once pristine power suit she wore now seemed slightly rumpled at the shoulders, the fabric damp beneath her arms. Her blazer had been loosened, her face shadowed with a weariness that hadn't been there the week before. Her eyes, usually sharp and commanding, were distant now, glassy, unfocused, heavy. A few feet away, reporters lingered behind barriers, murmuring updates into microphones. Camera shutters clicked in the background, capturing the stress of a person once considered untouchable. On social media, headlines had already gone live. Tech CEO faces fallout after wrongful termination lawsuit. Former partner's lawsuit exposes culture of dismissal at Halden Tech. Elias Vance emerges as industry forced to watch. The hearing had been brutal. Witness after witness called. Emails presented on screen. Audio clips played aloud. Each one a scalpel slicing through the image Serafina had curated for years. It wasn't just about wrongful termination anymore. It had become a story about power, about ethics, about how quietly dangerous underestimation can be when leaders assume competence is submission. And Elias, he hadn't raised his voice once. He'd sat with his back straight, his tone steady, his evidence devastating. He didn't grandstand. He didn't flinch. He proved. Now, as the courtroom doors swung open behind her, Serafina didn't have to look up to know he was coming. She felt his presence before she saw him, composed, poised, unshaken. Elias descended the steps with a calm that seemed to part the chaos. He wore a simple, well-fitted suit and carried a slim briefcase. His posture steady like something quietly regaled. He walked with quiet authority, his stride unbothered by the swarm of cameras or murmurs. His presence did not ask for permission. Claim space. Beside him walked his business partner, one of the former employees who'd left Halden Tech in solidarity. He wore a navy suit and carried a leather binder under one arm, but it was clear who led the moment. Elias paused briefly as he approached the bench. Serafina finally looked up. Her eyes were bloodshot but dry. There was no fight left to burn. They locked eyes for a beat. A strange stillness between them. Shared history, fractured trust, and the ghost of what might have been. He didn't sneer. He didn't smirk. He simply said, with the calm of someone who had nothing left to prove, I grounded myself long before you tried to dismiss me. The words landed like truth does. Quiet, undeniable, permanent. Then he turned, nodding gently towards the cameras without stopping, and walked down the sidewalk beside his partner, the two of them disappearing into a waiting black car. Serafina stayed seated. Behind her, a breeze lifted loose papers and whispers through the air. She thought of the early days, his quiet dedication in their shared workspace, the way he once talked about building something with integrity, the way he'd trusted her vision enough to tether his career to hers. She thought he was lucky to have her vision. But now, stripped of reputation and influence, she saw it clearly. She had been the lucky one, and she'd thrown it away. Blinded by narrative, deafened by hype. He hadn't needed revenge. He just needed to win on his own terms. And that's exactly what he did.